Hello, and welcome to Indie Book Magic, a podcast that connects geek readers and writers in an open, lighthearted, and occasionally random environment. We're your friendly hosts, Janeen Ippolito and
H.L. Burke.
And today we are bringing you back to the past. Sort of, kind of, not really. But today we are tackling humor for the second time in terms of writing craft. The first time we had so many questions about writing humor that we couldn't fit them all into an episode unless it was like 2 hours long, which we don't do that. We like to have short, sweet, awesome episodes that just add a burst of awesome to your day. So we are doing a second writing craft episode to tackle them all. And we're just calling it Q&A because, technically we're answering your questions. So it counts.
Yeah, I've totally lost track of who asked what or what the original phrasing was because everything's been kind of like mished and mashed together into some sort of like blender of hopefully awesome.
Hey, yeah, totally, hopefully awesome. And you know what? I mean, we're answering the questions, so it counts. We get stickers, right, Kaidi?
Yes, definitely stickers.
Yeah, like actually mentioning stickers, we have some exciting things that came in the mail.
Yay! I should like preface this quickly that I think you should be warned that I'm fighting a cold. I think I sound a little bit funny, so if you notice that, my apologies. I blame my husband. He brought these germs home from work. So
yes, no Heidi judgment. She's doing fine. But yes, we have awesome stickers that have cat dragons on them. And so keep an eye out on the Facebook page because we're going to be doing fun things with these. Because, I mean, who doesn't want a sticker that says cat dragon approved, right?
Yes, because cat dragons don't just approve anything. So you know that anything that says cat dragon approved is extra special.
Oh yeah, it's totally legit, completely legit. So now on to the episode. First question is, why and how do you add humor to dark moments? So I like this because it tackles first, why do it at all? Because that's the first question you should always ask yourself as a writer is, no matter who's telling you to do it, why? Like what reasons do they have? People who actually know what they're talking about will have actual explanations. Also, how to do it so that it makes sense. So what's one of the reasons and how you can do it, Heidi?
Well, for me, there's two different sides to the same thing, but it comes down to the same thing, which is it's a defense mechanism. I have a quote that a lot of people like from, it's been highlighted and sent to me by a couple of readers from the second Spellsmith and Carver book where Jericho's in a very tight situation and he's in danger for his life. And he says something really snappy to Oric, and it adds in that he knew sarcasm wouldn't help, but it soothed him. And I think there are certain character types is like that's their go-to is if I can't beat this, at least I can snark at it.
I can definitely see that. Kind of the idea of whistling in the dark or something, It's bad, yeah. So you might as well just have some fun.
And then there's characters who are more like me. I'm just going to go flat out and say it. Because I realized a long time ago that the comic relief has a better chance of living through the story than other characters. And it also, it's hard to like, there's a reason why the fool or the clown or the jester is the one who can say the things to the king and get away with it. Because if you couch something in humor, people don't get mad at you. So there's that sense of protection about it. I think you see that as the characters who get away with stuff because they can make the person laugh even though there's a fight. And I like writing characters like that because to me it's such a natural response when you're backed up against the wall to like snark at the wall, name it Steve. Yeah. It's hard to be, it's less scary if you call the wall Steve.
Totally is, yeah. And I'm with you there too. Humor is definitely one of my coping mechanisms with life. And so especially really kind of dry, sarcastic humor at times, I've had to more than one occasion tell people, no, I actually am completely joking. Yeah, that's definitely a great way. And also shows, a little more about characters to see who is going to respond to that well and who will look at him like he's in bad taste, So it adds some tension between the characters who will respond to that kind of sarcasm and the characters who like punch him because that's obnoxious.
Yeah, it's like in Sean in Psych when there's this running gag in the yin and yang that Sean, it's too serious for Sean, and because he can't be as snarky as usual because it would be inappropriate because he's trying to save a girl's life from a serial killer. He basically tells Gus that he has to take up the slack. And so Gus is doing all these really in poor taste jokes, like just randomly starts moonwalking and doing a Michael Jackson impression when they found a dead body. And everybody just looks at him and Gus is like, are you sure this is what? I'm like, yes, Sean, this is what I need. This is
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, you have to know your characters and their responses to it. Like, is this going to make the other character mad? Is the other character going to roll with it? They're probably not going to laugh if their life is in danger. But there might be a situation where just breaking down laughing is all they can do, and then you can maybe even take them to laughing until they cry, which I think ties into our next point just a little bit.
I have to say, yeah, I actually do have one. I have one pairing that their snark is what brought them together as a couple. So,
It definitely happens.
Yes, the second thing is give reader catharsis. So using humor in dark moments can give the readers a reason to laugh. And sometimes you need that, especially if you're doing a very, very intense, dark, atmospheric, even moody book. A well-placed bit of internal monologue that snarks something, even if it's dark humor, can let you actually keep going to dark places without the readers going, oh my goodness, this is the most depressing book ever. It lets the readers, take a breath for a second, react to things, and feel like they're safe. Of course, they're not safe, but it can make them feel like they're safe, which adds to kind of your pacing really well. Because when you're doing this, you want to make sure that readers both have moments where they feel like everything's going to be destroyed, and then, oh no, it's safe, but not for too long. So elements of humor in dark situations can be that kind of that safe space for a reader for a second before, you crush their souls again.
It's the rock you land on when you're hopping through the lava.
Yes, it is. I like that. That is exactly right.
Yes.
And of course, I took some of your next thing there, Heidi, your next point on it.
Yeah, exactly. The false, that sense that they're safe because, oh, look, it's just a large rock. It's not a monster who's about to bite me. I think that you can do that, especially when the characters don't know it, but the reader knows it,
Yeah.
Like, this works better, I think, in visual mediums, because I think most books nowadays are written in limited POV. So what the character knows,
Mm-hmm.
But when you've got that omniscient little did you know sort of thing going on with the narrator, it actually was a very bad idea.
Yeah. And that's where you see it with Douglas Adams and Terry Pratchett were two that were very good with that. And you can do this a little bit if you hop between different POVs. Like if you have like something happening, like one scene in one POV and one scene in another POV, you can do that a little bit. But it really does suit omniscient narrative very well. So anyone who said that omniscient narrative has no place does not know how to use humor all the time. Because
I think that's where omniscient works best. It's where you've got that snarky narrator. It's almost third wall breaking or fourth wall breaking. Sorry, how many walls are there? It's a triangular room. There's only 3.
First, second, and third POV. So technically, it would be the fourth wall because omniscient. Ooh, because it's like the fourth one.
Exactly, and so it's like sometimes it's the whole Into the Woods thing where they actually pull the narrator into the story and murder him.
Oh man, I love this.
I love that kind of thing, and I think that honestly, I think that you have to be kind of careful with fourth wall breaking because there are some places it's become kind of. I haven't watched Deadpool; it's a little too raunchy for me, but I know that he's known for that, and I think that it kind of gets a little over the top if everybody starts doing it, then they just think you're doing that. But it was a thing before Deadpool. It like we mentioned Douglas Adams. We mentioned
we're talking about movies. Trading Places did that where Eddie Murphy kept looking at the camera, and Mel Brooks does that a lot in like his movies.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He's like doing like little educational asides to the camera all the time.
Airplane. So it's a classic thing to do. You just have to be able to do it well, which is we went back to the fact that for humor, like anything else in writing, it takes work, it takes time. Don't expect to just incorporate things and then to magically work. You actually do have to work at it a bit.
And it isn't just the character can't just look and say, oh, hi, I'm in a book and that's funny. They actually have to be funny. Breaking the fourth wall is not a humor in itself. It's a vehicle for humor.
Mm-hmm. And the last reason why using humor in dark situations is great is quotable quotes. I love quotes. I gotta say, I love quotes. I love making quote graphics. I love making style guides for quote graphics. I get excited over font choices. I'm a weird person like that.
Yeah, I have a hard time because I like to use pretty backgrounds and then my font doesn't show up right.
That's where you have to like change the transparent, like do a transparent overlay and then like fiddle with the. Anyway, the point is, humor is a great way to engage with get readers engaged in your story. Like they will go for that. And even if your story is a bit dramatic and you want to use more dramatic quotes in your advertising and marketing stuff, having a humorous one now and then can really pull in people to, give your book a shot, especially if they're not sure about you. They'll say, well, that was funny though. Sure. Buy for $3. I'll spend $4 on an ebook. I'll spend, however much money on that and go ahead.
And I think compared to drama, humor is a little more digestible in snippets. A lot of times dramatic scenes depend on knowing so much about the characters and situations that a little snippet of a drama, and I'm like, it sounds great, but I have no idea who these characters, why should I care that the character's hanging from a cliff by his fingertips? Because I have no idea who the character is. For all I know, he could be a jerk.
So true. But yeah, the humor is definitely, it's a very universal theme, especially when you're speaking to your own culture. We're going to say, like, if you're trying to sell your book to someone in a very different culture, they may not find it funny. But in your own culture, it's a pretty safe bet to engage with your readers. Now, with that being said, when is humor too much?
I think that for different people, it will be in different lines. Some people will really not like any sort of like gallows humor, for instance. Some characters can mock death and, laugh in the face of danger. And other characters, some readers will think, well, that's not what I would do. I would be scared. I would be serious. Mm-hmm. And then you have the irreverent jerks of the world like me who can't help it. And I'm constantly having to tone myself down because I'll see somebody be very serious and there's something snarkable in the middle of it. And I'm like, how will they take that? But anyway,
you gotta just step away
and know the place. And I think that's the main problem is if it takes the place of sincerity. If there's a moment you really need something to be sincere and true and real, a joke can kind of ruin that.
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah, especially if it takes the place of the character saying, unless that's the point. If the character's told I love you by his girlfriend and he makes a joke because he can't handle the emotions yet, but that's telling something about his immaturity. And we eventually want to see that character come to a place where he faces his emotion and doesn't deflect, So
even Sean Spencer eventually has to say one thing without being too quippy all the time,
He does when his confession to love to Juliet is my favorite, but it's also completely, it's like, I can recite the whole thing, but since I met you, I've been thinking about buying a car.
Okay, I know I have to watch Psych. I'm going to see if I can get it somewhere. Right now I have a hard time. Where is it?
Amazon Prime.
Okay, I think I have it actually. I'm going to have to try to do it because
it was on Netflix and then they took it off and everyone was sad and then it went up on Amazon and there was much rejoicing.
Good. Yes.
There's sometimes you can be sincere and humorous at the same time, but less so often in sad situations, I think, or just when that thing really needs to be said,
And sometimes even with romance, it's just not satisfying because you do want, especially if it's going to be deep and committed, you want to see for a second that they're actually going to be that person that the other person feels they can be serious and handle serious things with. You want to see a glimpse of that somewhere.
And I think I'm going to go back to that Sean reference. The point isn't that he's deflecting his emotions in that point. He's using humor to express his emotions. So to him, buying a car is a metaphor for long-term commitment because he's a motorcycle guy, but you can't have another person on a motorcycle easily,
Oh, that's adorable. See?
So yeah, it's cute. But he's using it to bring it, but as opposed to if you did something less sincere, like he was expressing it and instead of saying something, he said something sarcastic that was the opposite, or suggested he only wanted to be with her to get a couples discounted movie night, that's insincere because it's like taking what you have and making it less serious instead of just taking what you have and relating it through kind of a quirky way, Yeah,
a quirky metaphor.
Yes.
All right. Now, another thing that's an issue with humor is when it's too much at once. You need to have space for a pause. You need to have space for people to get it. And also, humor is even more funny when you have serious characters around it and serious moments around it. It makes it pop. So
it's
you
that
have
contrast. Yeah.
Yeah, joke after joke after joke after joke. It just, I mean, honestly, it feels a bit like a Mel Brooks movie, which you can get away with, but it's not even like some really like joke per minute types like Douglas Adams and Terry Pratchett have moments where it's not jokey. They have things that you can take seriously because the point of humor is to make fun of something. And if you're just doing joke after joke after joke, there's nothing serious to make fun of.
And yeah, and also I think that you need that, it's a theater thing with the beat to pause for laughter. That I remember the one or two drama classes I took at a community college is like, there was this whole thing about what to do if the audience is laughing in the meantime. Like, do you want to try to draw the moment out, or you just want to like wade through, but like try to act natural? Mm-hmm. And I think that's important too, is when to know when to up it to another level, especially if you've got like a layers of a joke, because a joke can have multiple layers and it just gets a little more extreme each time. And you got to know when you've peaked and when the next, like, it would be taking it a little too far. And that can be hard to judge. And again, I think there might be some personal taste there.
It is personal taste. It's audience taste. It's finding the right beta readers who can, that you can read discerningly. It's using, the right editors, the right critique partners, who can look at that stuff. That is something to be picky about. If you're looking for something through humor, don't choose an editor or a critique partner or someone who's like, I don't get it, like who doesn't know anything about that, because it is a bit specialized. So if they don't know enough about the beats, then that reader is not going to be able to tell you if it works or not.
Yeah, I've talked about things that I don't find funny that other people find funny. I hate humor of embarrassment. It drives me nuts. And that's a very personal thing. But it's not exclusive to me, but a lot of humor is just based on that cringe factor. And I don't like it. But that's me. So you might try, if you're looking for a better reading, asking them what they find funny, see what are their top funny TV shows or movies, and see how that lines up with you. Because there's a big difference between like a screwball comedy like Bringing Up Baby or What's Up Doc, or maybe some sort of like more sarcastic dark humor like Falling Down, or like the more referencey humor of like, say, Guardians of the Galaxy or something like that.
And what's another reason, Heidi?
I think then you've got to know what that mood that you're having is, because sometimes humor can ruin moments. We talked about humor ruining sincerity, but something else that it could ruin is tension. Because it is a break. We talked about humor, like you mentioned, Janeen, humor is cathartic. And when you have a cathartic moment, that is basically a break, right? It's the character having that. If that break comes too soon in the form of a joke, then you've lost it and you have to work to regain the momentum.
Yeah, I agree, because with tension's a funny thing, and tension is that thing that you want to keep people turning pages. And if you keep breaking the tension over and over again with a bit of humor, especially if it's humor based on people getting out of things too quickly, the next time something bad happens, it's a bit like Crying Wolf. No reader is going to believe it. Like, they're not even going to take you seriously, and they may stop turning pages. And
here's an example that, The Emperor's New Groove. Cusco goes into the forest. Everything starts to be really creepy and scary around him. He starts freaking out, and then the whole bushes start shaking, and he's like, something big and scary is coming to eat me, and it's a squirrel. It's this cute little squirrel. And you get this automatic tension break. Of course, that one did manage to build the tension back up, because then he falls down a rock and it starts building. But that time, the joke is that the squirrel comes back to get him because he mocked the squirrel. So yeah, you can kind of like do a tension break and then build it back up again, but you're going to have to build it back up again. And I don't think you get away with that too many times in a row. It's like the false cliffhanger. Have you ever read a series that has false cliffhangers?
Oh yeah, they annoy me.
Yeah, it's like maybe once you can get away with the character screaming, and then I think it's a Goosebump example I've had where the character screams and then it turns out that she found a gray hair, or it's a jump scare and it's my cat. It's like, so the first time, oh sure. Second time is like, yeah, I'm on to you now. Third time, it might be a book closer, And
that's the thing too, is if you were doing a horror movie, I've seen plenty of horror movies that do like jump scares and that thing for like a good half hour. But the thing is, in a movie, you get to look at the darkness, you get to hear the creepy music or the silence, you get to have those other things that even though you keep getting these false starts, everything else in the atmospheric of the movie is building towards something big. In a book, you don't have that.
No, there's not the loud audio cue. Yeah,
exactly.
This makes you jump.
have to use your quote unquote jump scares a lot more carefully in a book than you would in a movie.
I hate writing jump scares. We should probably do like a craft episode where you can teach me how to like make people jump in my book, because it never feels sudden. Surprise is the worst thing to write in a book, because it's like, how do you surprise people when they can skim ahead? Like I read 2 paragraphs ahead of where I'm reading. I don't know if anyone else does this, just because my eye tracks so fast. It's very hard to surprise me. I keep spoiling myself.
One time I was doing a pretty creepy scene in Appalachia, and I was having I think it was this one guy. Oh, I forget his name, but it's this one creepy guy who's dressed in green all the time. He's a urban fantasy, urban legend. And I was having him show up outside someone's house, very creepy, very slow, and doing awful, ugly, creepy things and everything. And the house is shaking. He's licking the window, and all this weird stuff's happening. Not that I ruined it for you, but anyway, I got myself so scared writing it, and I was writing this late at night because I was teaching at a summer camp, and I had off hours, so I stayed up late writing the scene. And at the end of the scene, I looked at my friend next to me I can't walk up to my cabin alone.
No.
Because I got myself so freaked out because I was in Appalachia writing about horror in Appalachia, and at the end I was just like, this guy, the urban legend, is in this area.
He's gonna come and lick my windows.
Well, no, and then come in and melt through the glass and everything and such, and all kinds of awful things. It was bad.
Yeah, see, this is when I think lick windows. I think of my 2-year-old sticking her face up against the. No, I'm guessing that's not the image you want.
No, this is kind of you're in a house by yourself. You feel very vulnerable and alone. The person could have a gun, and they're doing creepy, weird things outside, and you're thinking this would be really creepy and weird and silly, except I'm in the house all alone and he's armed. Suddenly, this is not so funny. But yeah, so keeping that tension and keeping that going is really good. And the last thing that you shouldn't use humor for is when it takes too long to figure out. And that's where it comes back to something I said earlier, where you have to know your culture and you have to know your reader, and you have to make sure they're getting the majority of your jokes. You can have throwaway lines. I know you mentioned, Heidi, that you'll toss some throwaway lines. They may not get, but that's okay. But if you're going to work towards actually building a big humorous setup, you have to make sure people get it. If it's taking them too long to get it, try tweaking it or just get rid of it, because it's not really worth it to confuse your readers all the time.
Yeah, and it's references are like this, Janeen, but also anything kind of complex with a lot of moving parts, especially I think visual humor. Sometimes it's you kind of have to break down the positioning of bodies and the slipping of the banana peel, which if you have to explain it, it takes away the fun, which is why visual humor is hard in books.
Yeah.
And we've talked about a little bit, I think we did this in the last episode, covered funny words a little bit.
Yeah.
And you can get around it with that. But
or a main character who has a really good snarky way of viewing the world. So if you have someone who has a really strong voice, especially with first person, if they have a really strong voice and a really unique way of looking at the world, then you can get away with some more visual things because their perceptions of it will naturally be colored with humor.
Yes.
I think Dave Barry, when he started writing fiction, he got away with that in some of his books because he was a humorist anyway. So when he wrote fiction, he wrote it very snarky. And so he got away with doing a lot of visual setups. But that takes skill.
Yeah, and you might find it hilarious that you have a joke in there based on Latin roots or something. Chances are your audience isn't going to be as into that.
Well, it depends. If your audience is I don't know Latin officially. It could be a very small audience that likes Latin jokes, but if you're writing to them,
Yeah.
But that goes on to our next question, Heidi, which does humor have to meet genre and audience expectations? Yes.
Yeah, it definitely does. And different genres have different expectations. So if you're going back and forth between one genre to another, there is sort of an adjustment, which is one reason that certain genres don't work for me. I have had a thing in the past with cozy mysteries. There are very few that I like, and I'm very picky about them. But they do have a certain voice. And one reason they don't particularly work for me so much as they do for their target audience is I find them a little bit Scooby-Doo, if you know what I mean. Yeah. They're very based on broad stroke. A lot of times they're based on broad stroke, quirky characters. So you maybe really wouldn't find in the real world, like or you would find them, but they're so out there that they're not everyday people who you would interact with, like the person who's totally obsessed with birdhouses or something, and
It's larger than life characters, and so that that is the thing with cozy mysteries. They also tend to often have a much gentler style of humor, built off those broad strokes, built off of a gentle quirkiness. So you're going to get someone who collects birdhouses, not someone who collects like something like
stories.
Exactly. You're not going to see that. That's actually more urban fantasy. Which is
we'll talk about that later, Janeen.
Yeah.
Stay on track.
Yes. So with cozy mysteries and things like that, their humor and a kind of a gentle whimsy, there's a good word for it, is a key part of that. And so if you try to come at that with a very, very, very sharp kind of humor, you just have to be more careful. I think you can get away with it, but it's just, you may find a more narrow audience.
Yeah. One of the ones I do like, I said I have a hard time with this one, so I'm going to give a positive shout out. Cam Carroll's Fire and Ice Cream has just this cute little, it's a cozy shifter mystery. So there's paranormal shifters. So it is not branded, it's fantasy. But there's dragon shifters in it. And one of this charming little joke about how the dragon shifter has learned how to scroll through his phone, even though he's got claws.
Yeah, I read that one too. That was really adorable. It was a nice crossover between almost some contemporary fantasy, a little bit of urban fantasy, but then a lot of really just sweet, cozy mystery style stuff. It was a lot gentler than what you'd find in an urban fantasy.
Yeah, like, I don't know what the equivalent scene to gently scrolling through your phone as a dragon would be in an urban fantasy. I don't read a ton of urban fantasies, but I know you do, Janeen, so maybe you can help us out with that.
Urban fantasies are all about the place. So your place has to be distinctive. And they're all about the main character's voice. So as I kept mentioning how your main character can really sell the humor in your stories, you have to have a strong main character voice. And different readers have different preferences. So the thing is, because humor goes a lot of different ways, you can have the main character is more of a snarky, someone who's more sarcastic, someone who's more of just very dry and quiet. So it's highly personalized. You can like a bunch of urban fantasy and then find a couple that you don't, just because you don't like the main characters. And if you don't like the main character, you don't like the story. Because it is so main character driven. But yeah, it's a good contrast with a cozy, because with urban fantasy, it is going to be bigger. It's going to be darker, or at the very least weirder. There is lighter urban fantasy where you don't quite, have people who collect different kinds of blood. But, but you do, it has to be larger than life, it has to be quirkier. It has to, basically all those broad strokes that you're painting with in your cozy mystery have to have very fantastical world building root. So, it's not just someone who's obsessed with shoes. It's someone who is a refugee leprechaun person who runs some kind of a boutique somewhere out of an artsy garage. It has to be something really, extra quirky, extra fantastical. And it has to come a bit closer to the edge. People expect that. They don't want safe.
No.
In that. So,
and I think that with cozy, the cozy implies safe. That's kind of the
yeah. Whereas urban, you're talking about urban, and even though urban fantasy can be rural, I'm thinking the Southern Vampire series by Shalyn Harris, and I think there's some other examples of that too. It can be rural, but it still is very sharp, and the humor, what happens is going to be, it can be very, very sharp and dark, or it can be very light. Usually you can tell by the cover. The darker the cover, the darker the humor.
Yeah, I think that you can kind of, a lot of it depends on, like you mentioned, the environment, the city itself, if it takes place in location, is often a character, like that grittiness, that New York attitude or something like that. Or with Grimm, Portland is weird. And they totally embrace that because it's got all those hipster subcultures and different quirky things.
Yeah, so if you're going to be an urban fantasy writer, you pretty much just really have to find some places that you can really fall in love with. I'm working with one that's set in an alternate universe, Pittsburgh. And I set it there because I just can't get Pittsburgh out of my head, and I just fell in love with the place for an urban fantasy. But because you have to spend so much time there, you really have to find a city that really compels you to say, I believe that there have got to be fantastical creatures hiding behind these bushes.
That might be my problem, because I have never really lived in a city. I've visited cities, but I never really lived in one.
Actually, would be a good point, yeah, because even if you're doing rural, again, with the Sookie Stackhouse books, it's very much sense of place. She's captured rural small town. It's a small town, but it's still very much that feeling there. So urban fantasy with larger than life characters. What else do we got, Heidi?
Next, we have Victorian cheekiness, which you find in steampunk.
Yes.
It's goodness me, gracious. That's as close as I get to a British accent. I cannot do accents. I used to try to do Swedish when I was a kid, but that was a disaster. Speaking of humor, that didn't work.
So a lot of the humor in Victorian stuff tends to be very like, it's based off of making fun of proper tropes, because steampunk is kind of, a punked out version of Victorian. So you have both the respect for the Victorian, but also we're going to have the skirts be like this short instead. Or, we're going to have the butler be made out of gears or something like that.
Yeah, it's that whole very proper, can't be late for tea time, but you've got a ray gun in your pocket and you're happy to see him or something. I don't know.
It really is that contrast, and that people expect that in a different way. They want to see those steampunk environments. So to create humor in steampunk relies a lot on having a sense of what's proper in some way, and then having a smash together with that. It could be characters like one's improper and one is proper, and so you have them clash. It could be an environment that's, improper, those things. But a lot of it is sending up those cultural norms in different ways and snarking them, but also having kind of an affection for them.
Yeah, or characters struggling to maintain their sense of decorum in the midst of a robot battle,
These things just must happen.
These robots battles happen, but there's no reason not to keep a stiff upper lip.
Yeah. And that is something I write. My two primary genres I write are urban fantasy and steampunk. And I do find that my urban fantasy, it's kind of my let my hair down genre, because that's why I can just like snark a mile a minute and just go for everything. But with the steampunk, you definitely do have to go into a bit more of a historical sense of how you're writing things. Things are getting more situational. It's, you need to have at least one character who's trying to be proper, so that everyone else can kind of make fun of them. You need to have some of those like stiffer social rules and norms in place. So it definitely has that different attitude towards it. And then there is the outright humor, also known as those light genres.
Yeah, and I think there's a big range in this. You get like sort of the ridiculous humor, like something like 13 Clocks, the stuff that's outright like full on trying to make fun of itself. You get your satire. Like I think The Princess Bride, the book, is kind of full on humor.
Oh, yes, 100%. It doesn't take itself seriously at all. Like, it's really funny because people like, the movie is such a beautiful poetic love story. And I'm like, in the book, the author was making fun of both characters the entire time.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if you really fall in love with the beautiful poetry of Wesley and Buttercup and you really like cherish that in your mind, maybe don't read the book.
Yeah, I think you have to view the book as a separate thing. It's almost like because I believe the author had a lot to do with the screenplay, because so I think it was kind of his way of exploring two different aspects of the same story, which is probably pretty interesting to him as an author. It's not something a lot of people get a chance to do. So they're both kind of respectful to each other, but they're totally different things.
Mm-hmm. I remember first reading the book after like having grown up with the movie and being like, oh wow, he's really ripping into Buttercup here. Yeah,
it is weird. There's that dissonance there. But yeah, that's kind of a snarky take on it,
Yeah, very much so. So now that we've gone through those, we're going to go on to a couple different, stereotypes or types of humorous characters that you can see in stories, and maybe ones that you could either see that you already have them in your books or add them to your books. Because there are those characters that are kind of the fool or, the mischief maker or something. So who's starting off with this, Heidi?
I'm going to start with one of my favorites. The characters that I usually identify with the most is the Cloud Cuckoo Land characters. And this is actually a thing. I didn't realize it was a thing. I found about it, I want to say it was in a Super Carlin Brothers video just talking about Cloud Cuckoo Land, because I think there is an actual Cloud Cuckoo Land in the Legoland movie. It's where Unikitty lives, and Unikitty is my soulmate. She's my spirit animal. I love Unikitty. The idea is this character they're not a schemer. They're not out to get anything. They just live on a different plane and see things really differently than everybody else. Maybe they can see the magical little beings that are coming out of your ears, and they want to warn you that those magical little beings mean that you will have bad vibes today. There's the, like, you get your fake psychics like Sean, but then you have your real psychics who are totally believing everything they say. It's just like the way they relate to the world.
Just a little bit out there.
There's something off about them. Yeah,
and you mentioned one, a very well-known one is actually Luna Lovegood from Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
And again, she has the benefit of also, really being in tune with things, but also just being kind of fluffy.
Yeah, she's just, there's something like, what? And I think it adds some freedom. Those kind of characters, as, I don't know, have you ever seen a series that's done them as a main character? Because I think they have the potential to be a little bit annoying if they are too front and center.
No, I think they would as well, just because you want to have someone to anchor yourself in. You want to know what's the standard for what is quirky and what isn't. And if you have someone that fluffy as your main character, you're never quite sure, is it serious? Funny? What's going on here? Is this real? Is this fake? Do I even know?
Yeah. Is this a real life? Is this
fantasy?
Yeah. Sorry. You do not want me. I don't know about Janeen, but you do not want me to start singing on this show.
Yeah, no, let's not, because I would sing that one badly on purpose. So because you gotta. But I would say you can get away with it in a movie. I've seen some pretty fluffy movies with a main character, like the very dreamer kind of character. You can see that in some gentle romantic comedies. Mm-hmm. And then, there's the odd movie that says, here's the free spirit who's going to settle down a little bit. And then she's going to also become the manic pixie dream girl to this guy who's lives in his business 24/7.
She's a Zoe Deschanel of this world.
Exactly. So they do happen in movies, but in a TV show, I'm pretty sure that would get kind of annoying afterwards.
Now, I think a major point that we already mentioned these characters are not schemers. If you have a character who is kind of like this, but is also a schemer, what does that make them, Janeen?
That makes them a trickster.
I think everybody loves a trickster, though. I mean, Loki, there's a reason why he gets the reason he gets the snark is Tom Hiddleston.
No, it's also because of the snark. And I will say one thing with the trickster character, and this is a true thing that I've seen. There's a little bit of a gender bias here. If the girl's a trickster, she's cool, but she's kind of shifty, and you want to see her become sincere. If the guy's a trickster and he's hot, then he's like a buttload of fangirls. Like it just happens. I think it's just a gender stereotype. But no, tricksters, they are crazy for a purpose. They might be smiling, but there's something in their eyes that's calculating. If they're your friend, they will tell you right away as they're tricking you what they're doing. But if they're not, then they'll just trick you without letting you know.
You get warning. You don't necessarily get mercy.
Well, yeah, if they actually really like you, then they'll tell you what they're doing as they're doing it, and it will benefit. So yeah, these are pretty close to my heart because at my core, and this is something I usually say a lot because people you don't really want a trickster as your editor, but I actually I identify a lot with this in a very positive way. I think it's because I had a very strong moral upbringing, and I saw people could be real jerks if they were tricksters in bad ways, and I don't like people being jerks. But I used to tell my classmates, my students, oh yeah, so now we're going to do this and this and this and this and this, and if you do this, this is going to happen, and you're going to listen to me and do this, and they're like, you just told us your whole motive. I'm like, and you're going to do it anyway. And there was something kind of refreshing about that. So I would say the tricksters often, and they can be very useful as, baddies or anti-heroes or stuff, but you can make them charming and sincere if they are telling you what they're doing while they're doing it, and it is generally for your own good versus being jerky.
Yeah, I think that's where my ENFP versus your ENTP comes in, because I'm definitely Cloud Cuckoo Land characters are me and tricksters are you.
I do love a good trickster. I judge tricksters a lot because I can usually tell when they're being tricksters, and then I'm like, well, that's me, because I have a very strong sense of don't be mean to people. Because
you got to use those powers for good.
Yeah, you have to. You need to be able to figure things out to help people, not figure things out to destroy people. That's bad. But you see these trickster characters a lot in things like Alice in Wonderland, where you also see a fair amount of Cloud Cuckoo Land characters in that one. That one has an equal ratio of people who are just kind of flying their little bread and butterfly wings off, and then you have ones that are just like, wow, you are totally manipulative.
Yeah. Well, I think that we think of the tricksters as kind of this big snarky character, but they can be pretty subtle. I think there's that sense of, it's been so long since I read the Wheel of Time series, but there's a traveling minstrel type character. I think his name is Tom something, who is a little bit of this, because he's kind of he's a musician, but he's got his own agenda, and he's doing politics and writing poison pen letters behind the stage to like manipulate things. Mm-hmm. And so I think that you can have that. You can also have a serious trickster. So that does exist.
Yeah, and those are the ones you're really scared of, actually, is when you have a trickster who is laying low. When you see a trickster who's being very flamboyant, that probably, in your story, if you're going to use a trickster character as a positive character, make them more flamboyant and more open, because that shows that they're telling you their game. You know, they're telling you what they're doing. And unless they're telling you the wrong thing, you know, if they prove it true, then you can know that you can trust them as a character. If they're being more subtle about it, and most of it's going on behind the scenes, then you have to be more worried. And that's where you can use more like characters behind the Wizard of Oz, man behind the curtain kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then of course I have a couple examples of this. I love the Not Cat from the Durana Durgan's books, which again, I warn people, her books have major man chest, but they're actually very lovely, wonderful urban fantasies with actually not very much romance in them, and a lot of really awesome ectoplasmic ghost hunting action.
I want to write a character like a mustachioed military type whose name is literally Major Manchester.
Yes, like, or maybe like it's Manchester, but everyone just calls him that for short because like, but they have a Not Cat in there, and Sklain is amazing because he's a very positive son of a trickster character. I'm going to have to use a couple positive examples, so it's pretty easy to find negative examples. He is the kind that, he's bonded to the main male protagonist. He doesn't particularly like him, but he actually does, and so he keeps like threatening to do things, but he doesn't actually do them. And he actually does really helpful things, but then like he'll also shut out all the electricity because he likes eating electricity, because not cats do that. And so he also likes trying to eat chihuahuas.
Well, chihuahuas are. Yeah, I have a chihuahua joke in my short story in the romance anthology.
Yeah, you need to like just get this book sometime, Heidi, and just read his sections of it just to like appreciate the cat snark. But he's a good example again of someone who has lots, is all talk but is really devoted, and then actually, and we mentioned this in the previous Writing Craft episode, but it bears repeating because these are two trickster characters who are married to each other and both on the side of good, which you do not find very often in stories. And that is Diza and Zad in Sarah Delina White's Helena. I believe MBTI can have like some use in stories. I'm not like, a huge proponent of it. I think it's great if you know how to use it, but you shouldn't get tied down by it. But for this case, I'll use it. She has an ESTP male and an ENTP female who are completely in love with each other. They're both trickster characters. They both have agendas, but they'll both be very honest about it. And they're both on the side of good and right. And it's really fantastic to see them together in that story because you just don't see that very often.
Yeah. And they're a lot of fun. And they break couches, which I said last week.
I actually checked that chapter. I guess I can see how you read it that way. But yeah, they're both these trickster, fun-loving, very, schemy sort of characters, but always for the right reasons. And a lot of their marriage is them admiring each other's tricksterness, which is kind of adorable.
Yeah.
So the last character we have is what?
Well, this is my personal favorite, Janeen, because if I can't quirk, I don't work. And I love the quirky characters. And I'm going to do Psych again. I can't help it. Psych is my quirk. Because a lot of times these characters, they'll have obsessions or funny weaknesses that they can't let go even to their own detriment. Or they think that makes them really cool. Like Gus's pickup line, you heard about Pluto? It's messed up, right? So it's like he's got that obsession that he'll go up and that's his pickup line, and it never lands, but he's not giving up on it because that's his thing. So I think that if you give a character, like if you give them too many quirks, it's hard to keep track of, but a couple good solid quirks can really help a character stand out and be memorable without them necessarily losing all sense of realism as a person. And because we do have obsessions and funny weaknesses, we do have, I mentioned my, I think this was an email to you or something, but I can't give criticisms, literary criticism, like if somebody asked me to critique something, in groups of two. It has to be three. If I find two things wrong with a piece, I look really hard to find a third, because otherwise the universe is out of balance. It's like
goodness.
I don't know why. And I caught myself doing this, and I realized the only reason I was looking for a third flaw in a story I read was because I had two, and I had to stop myself.
Yes, like, you could have just like created an imaginary typo or something, you know, something that wouldn't have like broken the bank.
Well, they have to be balanced. Like one of them can't be a major plot issue, and the other is a typo. They have to be of equal size.
Wow, that's kind of fascinating.
I don't know why. So yeah, it makes no sense. And when I identified it in myself, I realized it made no sense, but it's real for whatever it's worth. Yeah, so characters can have that too.
Yeah, and the thing is, what I like about those quirks is that those can be something that if you're not really comfortable writing lots of over the top, you can give people little quirks that make them relatable. We're all human. We all have them. Of course, I don't because I'm perfect. But anyway, I mean, I'm trying to. I'm positive I have them, but I usually don't notice them. And then my husband will be like, "No, you do it this, and you always do this thing at this." Oh no, I do. I leave glasses of water everywhere.
Oh.
And we think is we only have a certain amount of glasses in the house. So, but every time I go to get water, I like get new glasses. So there's like 2 upstairs and 3 on my bedstand and 5 on the coffee table. And then we run out of glasses. And my husband's like, you know,
somebody is doing that here. Yeah. Like I'll go into the kitchen and I haven't been able to identify which family member is doing it. There will be like 3 filled water glasses sitting next to the sink. And some of it is Bruce, my cat. Okay, this is a side story, but I got to tell this side story or else I won't be happy. Bruce stopped drinking out of his water bowl about a month ago because at one point he was thirsty and Matt filled up a water glass and put it on the counter for him. And now that's the only thing he'll accept.
Oh, no. So he only drinks out of human water glasses, huh?
On the counter, yes.
On the counter. Oh, wow.
So, yeah, he might be the reason that the water glasses are piling up.
Royal Bruceness has a quirk. The cats have loads of quirks like that. But, you know, like I had a manager at a job I worked at. His cat would only eat a certain kind of food once a week. Like every week, the previous week's food, the cat would refuse to eat. And
it's not just cats. Dogs do weird little things too.
They do. Like, you know, having to like scratch at the ground or like, you know, weird instinctive things that make sense in the wilds. But, you know, in your house, you're just like, no.
Obsessive stick hoarding.
Yeah, because they have to.
Kane will clothesline himself trying to get a big stick into the house. You know, he'll have a huge stick sticking out of both sides of his mouth. He'll try to run through a door with it and plonk.
Yeah, and like I said, going back to the original, like the glasses thing is something I've always done. And I actually, when the movie Signs came out, where you know the girl puts the water glasses everywhere, my family looked at me, like my brother and my dad, and looked at me, and I'm like, what? Like you don't know, like they could be there, and they took like I could be helping save our family right now by leaving 5 glasses around the house with different levels of water.
Yeah, and you have that. You've got your Doctor Who's who get their like fezzes or something that they obsess with or fixate on. Ace Ventura talking to cats instead of the people at the party. I don't know. And people do that. There's the person who gravitates towards the pet and ignores the human. Mm-hmm. And if you watch your friends, I'm sure that you'll pick up things you want to include that you can steal from them.
Just be careful that, like, if it's something really obvious or if like check with them first to make sure they don't feel really awkward about it or it's not something that like they're secretly ashamed of or something they're not aware of. Because if they read your book and then one of your other friends points out to that friend that you used their quirk, it depending on how much of a sense of humor your friend has and how nicely you use that quirk, it could end up in some interesting situations.
But the good news is you might have to send one less Christmas card next year.
A nice and fluffy one.
Okay.
What's going on next week, Heidi?
Next week, Janeen, we are going to have a special secret guest. And we are not telling you who. And we're not telling you why. We will tell you when. It will be next week.
And it will be awesome. And keep an eye out for those cat dragon stickers showing up sometime soon and some kind of awesome giveawayness of something. It'll happen.
It's a cat dragon approved giveaway.
You need that. That's gonna go way past the good housekeeping seal of approval, you know? Like now, like we can like stamp the sticker on like different things.
But they only drink water out of cups.
I need to give that to my cat dragon character. That would drive some characters crazy, which I have to do it. All right. So Guys out there in listener land, please shout us out some love on Facebook, on Twitter, on SoundCloud. Check out our website and give us your reviews and your feedback and your thoughts and your comments because they're amazing. Right now, signing off, this is Janeen Ippolito
and H.L. Burke
saying have an awesome day.